everyone, and welcome to the Wright Brothers bonus reel, where I get to share some of the fascinating information I learned researching the Wright brothers that just didn't quite fit in the documentary video. The Wright brothers were an interesting pair. One of the most relatable facts about them to me is that they were incredibly concerned with safety measures for their gliders and later their airplanes. This makes sense when you realize that they started researching flying machines following the fatal glider crash of German aviator Otto Lilienthal. But it's always presented as though the idea of safety measures was something peculiar for early aviators, and really it was. They were so worried about nosedives, for instance, that all of their early models had an elevator in the front, which would catch the air like a parachute and help provide a safe, level landing. You can see this focus on safety in the way they tested their contraptions as well. First empty and tethered like a kite, later low to the ground, instead of just climbing in and flinging themselves off a hill as some other people were doing. This is also the reason they focused on developing a reliable way to steer and control an aircraft instead of beginning with lift or power. They reasoned that it didn't matter how high or how fast you went if you couldn't steer or land safely. When the first two gliders they built failed to perform well, the Wright brothers decided that something might be wrong with the data they were working from. As it turned out, one of the values they were using for air pressure was wrong. It had been in use for more than 100 years, but it was wrong. With measurements from their own experiments, Wilbur was able to calculate the correct number. That, combined with data from their wind tunnel experiments, allowed the brothers to build a much more successful glider. The Wright brothers made the Wright Flyer their first powered aircraft for less than $1,000, which equals about $20,000 today, at the same time that another inventor, Samuel Langley, spent $50,000, or over $1 million today, of U.S. Army funds on a plane that didn't fly. It just crashed into the river where they were testing it. Samuel Langley just happened to be the third secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, and it just so happened that his failed aircraft, the Aerodrome, went on to be displayed in the Smithsonian as the first heavier-than-air craft capable of manned flight. You see, more than 10 years after its failure to launch, and several years after the Wright brothers began producing functional airplanes available for purchase, Langley had the Aerodrome heavily modified, after which it was able to make some short flights, and he claimed that therefore, he had been the first to build an aircraft that could fly. This was after Wilbur's death, but this attempt to rewrite history and push their invention out of the history books really upset Orville. He refused to allow the Wright Flyer to be displayed in the Smithsonian and lent it to the London Science Museum instead. It wasn't until 1942, decades after Langley's death, that the Smithsonian Institution admitted that the Aerodrome had been heavily modified and retracted their claim that it was the first machine built capable of manned powered flight. After that, Orville agreed to have the flyer displayed in the Smithsonian, but transporting it was delayed by World War II, and it did not return to the States until after Orville's death. Orville Wright's final flight took place in 1944 aboard a Lockheed Constellation. The wingspan of the plane he rode in was longer than the distance of the first flight he had taken at Kitty Hawk. Today, both Ohio and North Carolina claim the Wright brothers' success. Ohio, because it was Orville and Wilbur's home and the site of their workshop and experiments, and North Carolina, because it was there that the historic first flight took place. I hope you enjoyed this bonus reel about the Wright brothers, and I'll see you next time.